Good evening and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall, joined tonight by Johnny Bisbee and Gareth Smith. Lots to talk about. What a weekend of NFL we had. The Wildcard Weekend, it certainly was wild, guys, wasn't it? What a crazy few games we had. Crazy weekend. I don't think all of our body clocks are quite used to it. Even though we get our NFL week on week, there's so much of it, we can leave it and take, pick and choose what we watch. Whereas this weekend, the weekends to come, there's just one game on and it's so exciting. And sometimes, our teams are going to be on a little later than others. Gareth has been getting practicing this weekend for his Philadelphia Eagles going up against the New York Giants. So what time in the morning is it starting?
1:15 in the morning is when kickoff is. You're talking about 3, 4, aren't you, before it eventually all done. If it goes to overtime, there'll be tears from me.
Well, I'm meeting Andrew and Adam this weekend, who are going to be coming down to London, and we're meant to be doing some bits and then going for some drinks and that. But I don't know whether me and Andrew are going to have the sustainability to not drink that much, drink enough to have a good time, to sort of stay up. But I think we're going to have to sort of sync our clocks right. It's probably going to be him just sitting in my front room while I'm in bed, and I'll just hear a little moan of cheer or a little moan of despair, I suppose, throughout the night. But Johnny, no Jets in this playoffs this year, slimly missed out. But I mean, some crazy games, right? I mean, some big plays, some big players, and some surprising results as well.
Yeah, like you said, it was really served up to its name, being an absolute wild card of a weekend. Obviously being a Jets fan, watched a lot of Dolphins and Bills over the years, and I'm not sure I've seen a game quite like that on Sunday. I think all the games had a lot of excitement, and while there were periods of potentially the Niners game, the Ravens Bengals game, which you didn't know which way it was going to go, or sort of slow down a little bit. I think each game really served up to being a bit of a classic. So yeah, what a way to start the playoffs. I'm looking forward to this weekend as well.
No way. There's so much more football to come with the Super Bowl accumulating in Arizona. I've said it was Vegas a few times. It turns out it's Vegas next year. I keep getting it wrong. It's definitely in Arizona this year. It's in Phoenix, Arizona. State Farm Stadium, I'm going to go for that one. All in February. Lots of franchise tag NFL to come to you throughout the rest of the offseason, throughout the rest of the playoffs, and the offseason. But we kick off with the games of this weekend just gone. The first game being the Saturday game, the Seattle Seahawks losing out to the San Francisco 49ers, 23-41. Competitive game, Johnny, but I think everyone called this really early from the start, didn't they? And what performance by the 49ers, just proving that both sides of the ball, they're just looking so good, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they've been my Super Bowl pick for the last month and a half. I think, on both sides of the team, you look at the names on defense, you just have to, Nick Bosa, the man is just a superstar on his own. He makes that defense, and he's got so many players around him on offense as well. Brock Purdy deserves an awful lot of credit for what he's done since coming in to the team. There have been a few question marks over his, whether or not it is all, this run is all down to him. Obviously a lot of players are helping out around him, but I thought he played really well on the weekend. Was one of our players of the week, and yeah, I think the Niners are on such a great roll. What is it now? 10 wins in a row. It's going to be really, really difficult for obviously, Gareth's Eagles are, fighting neck and neck. I think in terms of the NFC rankings, but it's going to really hard to stop this Niners team. But yeah, Seattle gave it a great effort. In the first half, they really made a game in it, and there were some points where you thought, wow, this Geno Smith and DK play making really good plays. There was a bit of it where I thought we could be in for a really, really exciting finish. But yeah, the Niners obviously came away. But full credit to Seattle as well. It's been a great season for them, exceeded expectations, and really look forward to seeing them next year.
Completely exceeded expectations. The Seattle Seahawks obviously like Johnny was saying, Gav, your eyes really probably were focused on this game specifically, really, for being the Philadelphia Eagles fan you are, because more than likely. Oh, well, it's been my belief and a lot of probably NFL fans' belief that the 49ers look sort of very solidified into going into the NFC Championship, and no surprises with this win over Seattle there.
Yeah, I think that when you look at what they've got, like both sides of the ball, as Johnny mentioned, they are dominant. The weapons that since the arrival of CMC, has there been a better mid-season trade for any team because at that point they were 4-3 when he took over, and look at them now. Obviously, Brock Purdy probably thinks the NFL's easy because he's not lost a game yet. And the fact at the end of the season, if he goes on to win the Super Bowl, he could be benched undefeated is an amazing thing that could happen. I think the interesting thing from them is I think that they are probably the strongest side in the NFC. I know it's probably not something you expect here from an Eagles fan right now, but I think that their offensive defensive lines are top notch. I think the way they move the ball, the way they run the ball, it doesn't matter who you have back there. I don't think quarterback wise, in all honesty, that there's enough there. Even with just play action and screens, you're going to move the ball a lot with CMC. And as you mentioned, Joey Bosa is just Nick Bosa, one of the Bosas.
Nick Bosa,
Nick's a big Bosa. Is an absolute tank. Joey's the one who was the reason why his side lost to the Jags, to be fair. But like Nick Bosa, the way he plays, like he is my defensive player of the year. There's no other player that I think deserves that title. And that performance and that second half, it was just so dominant of a second half that there was nothing they could get done. Seattle, it was like they went right. The halftime adjustments they made were insane to literally neutralize them for practically the whole second half. So yeah, they are looking mean and dangerous going into the divisional round. Poor Cowboys.
Our commiserations are with the Seattle Seahawks, who have really, like Johnny said, exceeded expectations. Congratulations to them for getting this far. Lots to build on for their future in Seattle, and it'll be really interesting to see them next year. You mentioned Joe Bosa. We might as well move on to the LA Chargers Jacksonville Jaguars game. A huge congratulations to our friend Sam across the pond. Huge Jags fan, loves to have a comment on our main show as well. She was there with her dad, said she believed the whole way through. Well, I got to halftime and I certainly didn't believe the whole way through. Gareth, I mean, the Chargers were winning, 28-7 at half. 20-7 was it at half?
27-7, I think it was at half time.
27-7 at half.
They got 3 points in a whole second half.
A tremendous collapse, but you've got to give credit where credit due is to the Jags. This team, the last since week 7, week 8, they've just found a way to win. They have really shown. I mean, shame they couldn't have done it in London when they were here, because we all thought they were going to beat the Denver Broncos. And it feels like that was really a bit of a precipice to the Trevor Lawrence's progression and how good Jags have been in the last about the latter half of the season.
It's Doug Peterson for me. I know being an Eagles fan, I'm biased towards Doug Peterson anyway. When we fired him, I was like annoyed because he's the guy who has a statue outside our stadium. He's a quarterback whisperer. He makes any quarterback that he has better. Look how he turned not only Carson Wentz into being elite, but then a certain Nick Foles then also went on to be a Super Bowl MVP. He just seems to have that calming influence when at halftime that team must have been down and out mentally. They must have been thinking, we are done. So what he did in that changing room at halftime to turn that whole thing around is just incredible. He was my coach of the year going into this. He's still my coach of the year now. And you think that the mess that he inherited in Jacksonville from the whole Urban Meyer and how he literally had a quarterback that everyone was thinking was a bust. No one thinks Trevor Lawrence is a bust now. And if they do, there's something not quite right about them, because the way he's playing and just the difference between one half to the other. I don't think we've seen a half like that, a game change so much, other than maybe the Colts versus the Vikings game. I think that's the only other time this year you've seen a game which has literally been a tale of two halves like that, where just that whole second half was just insane. How the Jags went on a run, and you can also almost see why didn't the Chargers fire their offensive coordinator today? You almost
I have not read that, but
yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen he's been fired today.
Lombardi, and they've sacked their
why
QB coach as well.
And he also puts questions on, I think, Herbert for me. The fact that if he went out in the field once and scored a touchdown, you'd probably find that game was over. All they had to do was probably score one touchdown that whole second half, and they failed. And it's even right down to when they went for the 2 points instead of just the extra point. But if that doesn't speak of Doug Peterson, nothing does. I don't think there's many coaches more aggressive than him. He didn't want the overtime. He wanted the win there and then, and he got it. So fair play. Massive respect for Jacksonville, and they're an exciting team moving forward.
I mean, Johnny, I'm going to have to ask the question, and I do feel bad for Jags fans saying this, but is it a Jags win or a Chargers loss? Because the Chargers were in such a prime position to win this game. And there was a narrative before this game, and there's been a narrative about Justin Herbert all season. There is the whole social media quarterback thing, that he's a highlight reel, doesn't win the big games. I mean, choking Chargers. That's what people have said, is Chargers choke in big games. I mean, I'm sort of erring on the side of, and it's not a big game. I can remember the Chargers winning, really. I've seen them be competitive in a lot of games. But is this a Jags win or a Chargers loss?
I do think it's a bit of both. I think as bad as the Chargers were in the second half, on the flip side, they dominated the first half, and their defense was able to, well, particularly Samuel Jr., his 3 interceptions on Trevor Lawrence, helped to put them in a position where they looked dead certain to go and win the game. And on the flip side, we got the full Trevor Lawrence experience on Saturday. I think, as good as he's been over the last month or so, he has been very inconsistent, I think, during his short NFL career. But he has been looking very sort of stable, and obviously they've had such a great run. But so going back to that was it was difficult to see. But yeah, going back to the Chargers, I think the narrative around them being almost bottlers in terms of the roster that they have, the players that they've built. I think man for man, they do have one of the best teams. People who you can name on both sides of the field. So, I mean, it's a difficult one. It's difficult to see who to blame. I mean, obviously they've sacked their offensive coordinator, and I think some of the play calling during the second half was poor. One of them, which has been mentioned, was the jet sweep end around, which they were using the backup for Mike Williams at the time, where they tried it previously in DeAndre Carter. When he went off, they took on their practice player. I think his name was Michael Bandy. He would never practice the play in practice with the Chargers. To play that in the game, and I don't know if that's on the offensive coordinator or Herbert miscommunication, and then to punt, which obviously resulted in a touchdown. I mean, in a game like that, I think, it's fairly unforgivable. But yeah, they couldn't get the run game working on Saturday. Blocking was poor. I think the Chargers need to have a big, long think in this season, because obviously Sean Payton's available, and whether or not Brandon Staley, as much as the reputation he had coming into the role, something doesn't seem to be clicking. We saw that with when Joey Bosa came off, smashed his helmet, the coach picked it up and gave it back to him to then throw it back down. I'm not sure that's the sort of leader that I want to be. Exactly. So yeah, I think Unfortunately, I had a bet at the start of the year on the Chargers to win in the Super Bowl. Don't ask me why, but I was just convinced because I really like Justin Herbert, and I think the social quarterback reputation he's got, I think, a little bit unfair. I think he is, he's going to be there hopefully for the next 15 years. The new sort of Phillip Rivers. I think he probably just needs a little bit of help, but yeah, that it can all catch up very quickly with you in the NFL. And now there's question marks over him. It's gonna be difficult going into 2023. I think.
I think the issue I have with him is the fact that, as I said, if the game's on the line, he doesn't seem to be the guy. Don't get me wrong, I draft him in fantasy tomorrow because I know he's going to get me loads of points every week. But is he the guy you want? Is he like a Mahomes or a Josh Allen or even, to be fair, Jalen Hurts has showed it this year? When the game is on the line, they can put the team on their back and carry them forward. And yes, I know he has had game-winning drives, but that was probably the biggest game of his career. And I think do it.
I think there's definitely going to be a conversation in the offseason about the future for Justin Herbert, and commiserations to the LA Chargers, but congratulations to the Jacksonville Jaguars moving on into the playoffs. The Dolphins losing to the Bills 31-34, a closely contested game, Gareth. The Bills ran this closer than people imagined with Skylar Thompson at quarterback, and I think they looked very impressive at times, and they showed why the Dolphins have deservedly been in this position of getting to the playoffs. But the Bills, they're a powerhouse team. They still look as dangerous as ever, don't they? But they do have a habit of running these closely scored games at the minute.
I think with them, I think that they were that much of a favourite going into it. Were they like 12-point favourite or something?
I'm not sure.
Which there's never been a 12-point favourite, 10+ point favourite overturn and win a game in the history of the playoffs. How well Miami did surprise me, and yet when you did how close they ran it with how many drops they had was just incredible. You think that if some of those drops, like for example, there was one to Waddle, which he would make in his sleep usually, and he just dropped it. You think if they'd have made one or two more of them, this game could have swung the other way. I think, to be fair, Miami's defense, despite conceding 34 points, actually had not a bad game. They actually were all over the field, disrupting the pass. Josh Allen at times didn't look like the Josh Allen that we all know. But I think that when the game is on the line, I think Josh Allen's one of those people who will deliver, though. And I think that's where the opposite to him and Justin Herbert is if you need a drive to win a game, you're going to put money on him doing it. And that's, I think, the difference. And if it's a close game, you believe Buffalo will still win it. And I think that's a big thing for a team.
I think you're really right there, Gaff, in saying, not my theory, but I think it's proven true. Big players make big plays in big games. And the Dolphins players at times, I thought it could have been really easy, Johnny, for us to wake up Monday morning and all over social media be like Skylar Thompson, this Skylar Thompson. Skylar Thompson was really good in this game, I thought. Was really good. Yeah. And it was almost the rest of the team that let him down, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
It's when you look at his stats as well, which looks really harsh. He was like 18 completions from 45 attempts. That looks horrific. But when you see the amount of them that were dropped, it just isn't fair on the poor lad. But yeah, I'll just have a look at the stats there, thinking, what was his completions like? Well, those stats look horrific, but that was not down to him at all.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, Waddle can get into the game in the first half, the amount of drops he had. But if I was a Dolphins fan and, the game's on the line, last couple of minutes, the score as it is, I'd be absolutely livid by the Dolphins flirted with the false starts all game, and that ultimately
so many times
cost them the opportunity to go and win the game. I think they had 3 or 4 times where where they had a false start penalty.
They certainly had about 4 to 5 times where I thought flags thrown, thrown, and I know that the stadium clock is like probably minusculely slower than the one on our televisions.
Yeah.
So and I thought there were just loads of times they could have had that.
Absolutely, and even when they ended up using a timeout to to stop the penalty. So at the end of the game, they've got no chance to stop the clock. It just makes things so much more difficult. So, I mean, that's just a bit of inexperience from Mike McDaniel, the coaching staff. But like Gareth said, I thought Skylar Thompson played fantastic for a rookie QB who was a 6th rounder coming in, and I mean when he played the Jets, he looked pretty awful. So I had no real expectations, and he's got a nice story about him. I think his dad drove over like 200 miles from from wherever, I can't remember whereabouts he drove from, but the whole sort of narrative around him was nice, and to have a game like that, it would have been brilliant, I think, to see him get the opportunity to potentially win the game. But yeah, I mean, at the start of the game when it was 14-0 Bills, I think I was just on my laptop doing some work, not really paying attention, and then next thing you know, it's all square, and the Dolphins take the lead. So I had to put that down and concentrate a little bit. But I think the Dolphins, it's been I'd say it's been a successful season. Obviously back in the playoffs, made great progress to start the year. I think there are still obviously a lot of question marks over the quarterback position, and their defense as well. I think, as Gareth said, I thought they played really well, but there are some question marks. But they've got some really young talent as well, which is good. But yeah, I think now for them, they'll be very looking forward to getting into the off season, making some improvements, and seeing where they can go from here.
Apologies, I sort of missed my cat is fighting another cat, and I heard an almighty sound. So apologies for I got where you were going with that moment there. So I do apologise if there was any noise in the background then. So we'll move on to the Giants-Vikings game. Upset of the weekend, some people may say, Johnny. The Giants beat the Vikings 31-24, progressing to the next stage. It was a while since they've been in the playoffs, and it's been a while since they had a playoff win. For me, this game had my player of the weekend. I thought there was a player in this game who was the best player all weekend, and I imagine we're going to agree on this. So
absolutely. Well, I'm going to say Daniel Jones was the best player of the weekend.
I thought he was the best game he's ever played for the New York Giants. Fantastic.
I'd completely agree. I think everything that he did went well. He, making the short gains, the big plays, using his feet unbelievably well. I mean, what a story this guy's had. He looks like a game-winning sort of quarterback. Obviously question marks over him before the start of this season. His future up in the air, whether or not he's going to be the long-term quarterback for the Giants. I think they've got no other option. He, looks really good under Brian Daboll. He's someone who's completely transformed his game in terms of bringing the Giants into his sort of skill set and playing that way. He's also transformed Saquon, who was great again, backing up Jones. So yeah, I mean this squad. At the start of the year, I was looking at it thinking this is very sort of mediocre. I'm not sure, what's going to happen. All of a sudden, looks, they have a real chance. I think they're playing the Eagles. It's going to be a really difficult game, but I think they do have a real chance. They'll make a bit of a game of it. Don't want to say too much in front of Gareth, but yeah, I'm really, really, really looking forward to it. I went into this weekend thinking anything could happen. The Vikings, there's been so many question marks on their defensive play all year, and lo and behold, the Giants, some of the more inexperienced receivers have come into their own. And yeah, Daniel Jones and Brian Dable are leading them to a really, really successful year. And I'm really looking forward to seeing them next weekend as well.
You have to admit, Gareth, to beat the Vikings, you got to do two things. Take every opportunity with the points that you can get on the board and stop Justin Jefferson. Now, I know Jefferson definitely got a touchdown because I recall it in the highlight. I recall it watching the games. But I felt that Justin Jefferson was very silent for this game for what Justin Jefferson... When they've needed to win big games, he's come alive. And the Giants stopped that. And you have to admit, even as an Eagles fan, that Daniel Jones was the most exciting player to watch this weekend. He was phenomenal, I think, anyway.
He was, and he's going to get paid. Like, he has to get paid this season. There's no doubt should be in anyone in New York that Daniel Jones is the quarterback for the future for them. He's, for me, the second best quarterback in the NFC East, obviously behind Mr. Hurts. But I think that the one thing that they have been good at against teams like, as you mentioned, the Vikings, who aren't defensively that strong, will be an interesting clash this weekend against a top defense. Yes, I know we had that game where their backups played really well against the Eagles, first teamers, but it's a different game when you're playing at the Link in a playoff game against the number one of the top pass, officially the best sack defense since the '84 Bears. So that's not a bad stat to be up against. I think that the thing that the Cowboys are also very good at is that run. They're very good at, they need the run and the play action to get their game going. And against the Vikings, they managed to achieve that. And defensively, yeah, they massively stepped up. I like some of their wide receivers who at the start of the year didn't really know much about, like Hodges.
Isaiah Hodgins, Richie James.
Yeah, they've all really impressed me this year, particularly when players that I know Slayton's has been playing well as well. But when they spent all that money to get Golladay in, and he never really worked out, and whereas some of these guys that you hadn't really heard of much of really have stepped up and gone to play really well for them. As I say, with the Vikings, you've also got to remember that wasn't this a primetime game, and Kirk Cousins and primetime are two things that don't go hand in hand particularly well. Not that he had, I don't think it wasn't one of his first primetime games, but you know, he just doesn't win at primetime, does he? But for me, I think it's the Giants have had a phenomenal year. If it wasn't Doug Peterson, then Daboll is coach of the year. They've both turned these clubs around from being horrific to divisional game in the divisional games in one season, which is a hell of an achievement for both. They're doing the best with what they've got there. As you mentioned, their roster isn't elite talent across the board. They had Barkley, who never seemed to be able to finish a season. All that seems to have changed. Like Barkley now seems to be indestructible. Not that I'm jinxing him to get injured this weekend, because I wouldn't do that anyway. But you just look at their team, which on paper isn't amazing, has overachieved this year, and it's a sign of potential good times moving forward for the Giants. I know we've had a writer write about on the Franchise Tags website, please do check it out, who has talked about the future of the Giants and how it is potentially good times coming back for. But at points, Daniel Jones did look like playoff Eli Manning. Well, literally.
I thought better. Like, I thought at times. I thought the way he was running at times. Like I was going to jokingly put in our group in the first quarter, like when did Daniel Jones become Lamar Jackson? Because he was running with such conviction. He was that he wasn't running like Lamar with the athleticism like Lamar does, but he was running like Pat Mahomes. That sort of direction, hungry. I can make the play, and then when he was in the pocket, it felt like that as well. What will handicap him is that the teams do get better. The teams they are competing against are going to get better, and it will be hard. But there is a strong future in New York if they improve in the offseason. Commiserations to the Minnesota Vikings. They have been a very, very exciting team to watch this year, and have done what I think makes you a good team, which is in them close games you've won them. And they've made some massively memorable moments this season as well. So it's going to be very exciting to see the Vikings next year. We move on to the Monday night game, or Monday night, Tuesday morning game. The Baltimore Ravens losing out to the Cincinnati Bengals. Matchup of the AFC North, 17-24 to the Bengals. Gareth, your dad's a Bengals fan. I'm sure he was very happy to beat a divisional rival. Not the most interesting games, more like a getting their job done, on to the next one job for the Bengals.
It was. It just seemed more of a slogfest for both teams. Both teams. I think that it's a very different game as well if you've got Lamar Jackson playing for, no disrespect to obviously Tyler Huntley, but he is not Lamar Jackson. And I think that doesn't half make a difference. It was one of them where, yeah, okay, and it was only 7 points difference, but it was one of them where I didn't stay awake to watch it because a lot of Cincinnati's through. It was just one of those that automatically was like, Cincinnati's through, I'm just going to go to bed and watch it the next day. I was surprised it was as close as what it was, but at no point in that game did it look like that the Ravens were going to win. They were always seemed to be playing catch up, or whenever the Bengals needed something, they got something. And that's what you need to do. And sometimes in these wild card rounds, you just need to get through. And then when you get to divisional rounds, then start balling. And that's what they did. And I have every confidence in the Bengals as a team. I think they are, on paper, the team that no one in the AFC wants to play. The fact that his record versus Mahomes is ridiculous. Is it 3 in a row versus Kansas City now or something like that? And again, I don't think the Bills are particularly going to want to play them, because that whole team, when you look at it, is got elite players everywhere. Their biggest weakness always was how many times Burrow got sacked last year. Those numbers are reduced. Don't get me wrong, they've not gone away, but he's not spending 7 times a game on his backside.
Well, he might be in the next few games, because Jonah Williams has gone down with dislocated kneecap. There's been injuries on his offensive line. It is a little bit of a rubber bad luck, isn't it, going into... Say again?
He's back on the run.
Yeah, well, he could well be, but Joe Burrow can do that, Johnny, can't he? He can do that. Even though these injuries have been happening to their O-line, do you still think Bengals have got a deep playoff run here?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with Gareth. I think the Bills will be. Yeah, I think Bills fans will. I mean, yeah, they'll be nervous going against the Bengals, because no one wants to play them in the AFC. I think their defense shown on Sunday stepped up again at the right time. I know they did it last year in the playoffs, and I think they were able to sack Huntley, I think 4 or 5 times. Giving him no time at all. And when he's a backup quarterback, when he played a backup quarterback, that's the worst thing I think that can happen. I didn't think he played particularly badly, Huntley. I just felt, obviously a couple of game-changing mistakes, the interception in the first half, and obviously the fumble, which was returned by Sam Hubbard. So, it wasn't a pretty game. I think the Bengals will just be really, really pleased to just get through, because there were a couple of points where, people were thinking, right, the Ravens are, they're looking the more favourable team to go through, but Joe Burrow's a match winner. Their offense, and obviously bunged up a little bit, potentially on offensive line, but they can make plays out of nothing. And given how inconsistent the Bills were, I think, on D against the Dolphins, obviously Elam had a great game, but I did think at times the Dolphins were able to get to the Bills a little bit more than we sort of expected. If that happens against the Bengals, you're talking a little bit of a different story. I think it'll be a very, very close game this weekend. What a matchup. It's going to be, 2 of the best quarterbacks going up against each other for a place in the AFC Championship. What more can you want?
we've gone from crashing cats to barking dogs. It feels like it's a real animal home this week on the Franchise Tag podcast. Is that coming from your house, Gary?
It's the pug, and I don't know where she is. She's probably barking at herself in a mirror. But yeah, she's somewhere about.
Oh, yeah, bless her. Well, no, that's more than fine. It's okay. We go on to the Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What we all regarded was going to be a snooze fest. 31 Cowboys to 14 Buccaneers on Tuesday late night, Gareth. I am going to have to apologise a little bit to the Cowboys Nation because I have been pretty terrible about the Cowboys in the last few weeks. And I've said some bad things. I thought this was a defensive masterclass by them. And I've said that Micah Parsons is just their defense. I thought their defense as a whole played really well against Tampa. I think, and actually, it wasn't just defense. I thought their whole team played really well. I thought the offense was really good as well. It felt like CD was never going to get a sniff, and it was like, well, no, it doesn't matter. And it sort of didn't matter. And I was a little bit worried with Lamb not getting targets might change the complexity of the team a little bit, but it really didn't. I was really actually impressed with the Cowboys in this game. And but at the same time, I would say the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a pretty poor day at the office, Gareth.
Yeah, they limp their way into this, Tampa Bay. They just don't look the team that they have done. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in Tampa Bay. Obviously, no one knows the way Tom Brady was talking after the game as well. It sounds like he's basically was saying he was thanking all the press and all the rest of it. It was almost like a goodbye to Tampa. Dak looked really good, but Dak will have games where he does look really good. But when he has a bad one, and it's usually in a big game, and it's took him 7 years to have a second playoff win. Which ain't great numbers for the amount of times that Dallas are in the playoffs. I think the thing with Dallas is, I think that they've got a phenomenal team with a phenomenal roster. I just don't rate their coaching staff at all. I think McCarthy will get outmatched next game by Shanahan. I think the Shanahan's a much better coach and more astute. I think that McCarthy is just lucky he's got an elite roster on his side, because I don't see him as that good of a coach. And I think if he'd have lost to Tampa, he would have either lost his job or took a full-time job as Jerry's housemate. Because that's all he seems to be good for, making him nachos and going for beer. Because there's no other logical reason why he is as highly regarded by Jerry Jones. I think that Pollard is their lead back. I don't get how Zeke is, but Pollard for me is an amazing running back and very, very much underappreciated. And
very, very much a free agent at the minute in the offseason as well.
Yeah, very much. And I think he will be in demand. I think they were hoping he wouldn't be, and they'll be able to sign him back on a fairly cheap deal. There's no cheap deal going for him now. He's been their lead back this year, and they're paying Zeke a lot more money to do a lot less. And their defense, Parsons, has been brilliant. But then you look at the likes of Lawrence, and they all stepped up and made an average Tampa Bay side look what they are, average, and didn't belong in the playoffs in the first place.
Do you agree, Johnny? The books weren't belong in the first place.
I mean, obviously, with how the NFL works, the NFC South has been possibly the worst division in football this year. So, obviously one of them has to go through. I think, on paper they are better than the Falcons, Panthers, and Saints. But yeah, likewise, they've limped into the playoffs, and this team has really regressed over the last 12 months. I think at the start of the year, a lot of us were still quite high on Tampa, particularly because obviously Brady coming back gives them that extra sort of edge. They've still got players, all around the team but I think a few of them have got found out a little bit this year. They lost a lot of players, and on the secondary, they had a bit of injury issues, but they lost likes of Jordan Whitehead. And yeah, I mean, I agree. I think looking at, listening to the press conference that Brady gave, it seems pretty obvious that he won't be there next year. I think this team does need a little bit of the rebuild, and so it makes sense to move on from Brady. Where he goes now, or what he decides to do, is another question entirely. But yeah, I'm pleased for the Cowboys. I think I'm probably like you, Freddie. Probably have given them a little bit of stick this year.
I feel a bit bad.
Yeah, I mean, after the defeat to the Commanders going in, I know obviously it was a bit of a dead rubber, but yeah, that looked horrendous. And then goes next game to have a quality game like that. So yeah, full credit to him. The tight ends I thought were really good. Schultz, they could get the players. I think the variety of receivers that they had was really good to see, and it's good to see a plan like that work out. But they come up against the 49ers next week, and I think that's a completely different obstacle to what the Buccaneers of this season present. And yeah, as well as he played yesterday, it's going to be really, really difficult for them to get something, especially on the back of what we saw last year with the antics there. I think adds a bit of extra spice to the game. But no, I can't see them following up, I'm afraid.
Well, commiserations to the Bucs and congratulations to the Dallas Cowboys. We move on to the divisional round, and what a weekend it's going to be this weekend. Saturday at 9:30, the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead. On the Saturday night to the Sunday morning, you have the New York Giants going up against the Philadelphia Eagles at the Link, NFC East matchup, which Gareth is ecstatic for. Sunday night, 8 o'clock, the Cincinnati Bengals go into the Buffalo Bills. And then leading on later into the night, 11:30, the Dallas Cowboys go into the San Francisco 49ers. Johnny, I'm going to give you the AFC games. Gareth, I'm going to give you the NFC games. A quick roundup of who you think will win that game. I'll bounce between the two of you. So, Johnny, we'll start with you. The Jaguars going to the Chiefs. A real hot matchup. The Chiefs, first time we're seeing them in the playoffs this year. Who's going to come out of this the winner?
Yeah, I think the Chiefs will be, obviously the favourites going into the game, and I think they have the best player in the league in Mahomes, and I think they should be able to, at Arrowhead, overcome the Jaguars, who are in great form on the back of a big result, but it's difficult to see them going to Kansas City and get a result, but weirder things have happened this year. Obviously, the Bengals last year went to, and obviously in the AFC conference game, and got a result. So don't put anything past them. But yeah, I think this is a Chiefs victory. And for the second AFC game, Bills Bengals. I don't know. I'm very tempted to go risky and put my neck out and say the Bengals. I think as much as I've been on the Bills bandwagon, I think throughout the season, I think they have it all together, and their Super Bowl ambitions. They obviously one of the they have been for the whole year one of the favourites. I just think this Bengals team in the offensive form that they're in, and now the defense starting to come good. We've had doubts a little bit about Allen's in turnover ratio. Obviously. Going to give some away, but I don't know. I think they could be quite costly coming up against the Bengals. So I'm going to say Bengals victory in a very close, bit of a shootout game, which will hopefully be a nice watch.
I'm thinking the Chiefs are going to be beating the Jags, and as much as I do think the Bengals can beat the Bills, I am rooting for the Bills just because I think it would be really a real shame.
Yeah.
This team is that good that we've never seen them go all the way like to the Super Bowl. I think that's the only reason I would choose the Bills, is because I feel like Bengals at least have been to it last year, and the Bills I feel like deserve to be going there at some point.
And they've got a lovely story as well behind it. I think obviously
Yeah.
All our thoughts are still with Damar Hamlin as he recovers. And yeah, I think you know, the narrative around that and the story around that just makes it extra special. So yeah, but yeah, rooting for both teams. I'm just looking forward to watching some good football, to be honest.
And then Gareth, your opinion, you're going to go with the Giants and the Eagles game. Obviously, I think we all know how that's going to go. And then on to the Cowboys and 49ers game.
So actually, before we begin, it seems that there's been an announcement on Russell Gage. He should be getting released from hospital, which is good news after his injury. So obviously, you wish him a speedy recovery as well. So if you look at the Eagles versus the Giants, I think it's going to be the Eagles. I just think in every position, other than maybe running back, the Eagles are better. Lane Johnson's back. Jalen Hurts is back and medically cleared. I think that every asset, the Eagles are better in every position bar running back. And the difference is, the Eagles running back doesn't have to be amazing. Don't get me wrong, Miles Sanders is a really good running back, but they're up against the Giants defense, which is horrific against the run. I think they were 31st in the run. And just what a team that's horrific against the run needs, a mobile quarterback that runs all the time. And also the Giants' strength is on that run game. And the Eagles' defense, since Jordan Davis has come back and adding two huge pieces to the center of it halfway through the season just to make them stronger, I can't see anyone but the Eagles winning. But as I say, if Andy was on here right now, I'm sure he'd be saying the opposite of me. So yeah, it'll be an interesting game either way. The Cowboys versus Niners, I think it's Niners. Again, I think they are better than Dallas in every facet, probably other than quarterback. But as I say, I don't think quarterback is the be-all and end-all at the 49ers. I think Dallas's defense is very Micah Parsons heavy. And if you neutralize him, which he has been neutralized in a few games this year, that defense doesn't look good at all. Look against the Eagles when Gardner Minshew ripped them apart. And if it wasn't for a few turnovers, the Eagles with Gardner Minshew might have beaten them. And any game where he is neutralized, they have nothing else to offer really. So I think the AFC Championship game is going to be the 1 and 2 seed. Controversially, I know. Who would have thought the two best teams in the conference?
It's not like it's predictable. It's just, you know, a lot of us have called this for a while, I suppose. But there is lots of exciting NFL coming your way from us here at the Franchise Tag Podcast and also at Off Grid NFL. Johnny, I know you've got some fantastic articles been coming out recently. Just like us at the Franchise Tag, we've also got some good articles coming out at the minute. A lot of cross wires going on here. A lot of things going on in all assets of the NFL UK. We've had a lot of interviews with XFL players that Gareth has been doing and XFL coaches, which you should definitely make sure you check out because that is coming to you after the Super Bowl into the off season. That's when the XFL and the rest of the American football type things are happening, which will be really good fun. So why don't you start listening to the stuff now so you've got a bit of a knowledge of players and coaches before that all starts in the off season. But until then, make sure you like and subscribe to us. Make sure you carry on watching the pod. We've got the betting show and the fantasy show coming this week, with lots more coming your way on the Franchise Tag Podcast. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you all very soon.